You're listening to the Movement Detective Repodcast. My name is Monica Volkmar, and I'm your friendly neighborhood movement detective. My aim in this podcast is to attempt to seek the truth when it comes to resolving problems that you might be having with your body by sharing stories and case studies from my 13 or so years of practice as a movement and manual therapy practitioner. I'll also be interviewing other professionals in the field so that you can find hope and solutions to explore on your own journey to moving and feeling better in your body. And in my day job as a craniosacral therapist and movement coach, I help people to get to the root of what's keeping their bodies restricted, feeling unbalanced, and preventing them from moving the way that they want to due to chronic symptoms. I'm also an instructor for Anatomy in Motion, and I love helping movement and manual therapy practitioners better understand gait and closed chain joint mechanics so that they can first help themselves in their own bodies and transfer that embodied wisdom onto their clients. Today on the podcast, you're going to be hearing from my guest, Marlo Fisken. Marlo is a movement educator who specializes in floor-based flowing circular movement and pole dance. She's made quite a name for herself in that world, teaching group workshops internationally and also working with clients online from her home base in Virginia. I wanted to speak with Marlo because a theme in my life lately is the attempt to rediscover the joy of movement from a non-instrumental standpoint, meaning for about a decade or so since I had to stop dancing, movement became all about fixing my body and resolving my pain and less about having fun in it. Don't get me wrong, I actually did have a lot of fun learning about biomechanics and exploring movement in a therapeutic context. But what got lost along the way at some point was remembering how to tap into that childlike part of me that just wanted to move in a goalless way simply because it felt good. And that's where Marlo's wisdom comes in. Her teachings are all about getting out of your head and into your body and just having fun. In fact, immediately after speaking with Marlo, I realized that there's a huge place for infusing fun into even the most therapeutic, rehabilitative movement spaces, and how flipping that sterile clinical vibe around can actually improve your progress. If you're a movement and manual therapy professional and have forgotten the importance of play for yourself and your clients, then I think you'll be inspired by Marlo's stories and insights. The next day after speaking to Marlo, I actually found myself doing a few things differently. First, I started getting curious about what kind of movement I actually wanted to do from a non-instrumental standpoint. If it wasn't for a goal or for an aesthetic or for any kind of therapeutic purpose, what would I actually want to do with my body? What would make me happy to do? What would I enjoy doing? And it struck me as a little bit sad that I didn't know the answer to that question because so much of my movement practice was around fixing my body. And second, I started to find ways of making my client sessions more fun. I found myself making exercises into games, and I made sure that we laughed more in our sessions and took things less seriously. And you know what? I really think it helped both to create a closer connection between myself and my client, and like, who doesn't want to have fun? I really think that you'll get a lot out of this conversation with Marlo, who joined me from her home in Virginia. A friend of mine who lives in the States, he sent me a message one day and he said, "Hey, do you know Marlo Fisken?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he was listening to a podcast interview with you, and he didn't know that you and I kind of were aware of each other online anyway. And he said, because you remind me of her. Did I say that right? Yeah, you, Marlo, remind him of me. And I was like, oh, well, I'm flattered because Marlo's way cooler than me. But he said we have a similar vibe in some ways, and I don't know what that's about, but that made me want to get back in touch with you. I guess this is really present for me where I'm at in my life. What I see you standing for in your work online is really refreshing. Because what I think I'm seeing anyway, my perspective is that what you're
Mm.
doing with your movement and dance education, is that it seems to give permission for people in all types of bodies, all sizes of bodies to discover and rediscover maybe that movement can and should be fun and playful, and it can be weird and it can be expressive. And even going to the gym doesn't need to be so rote. It can be also a creative and expressive act. And it doesn't need to look like what another normal person's expectation of a workout should look like. And I think that's an incredibly healthy relationship to have with your body and movement. And I just see that you're such a wonderful role model for people who want to develop a healthier relationship with their bodies and with movement. And in my life right now, that's something that I'm trying to work on. It's challenging, but I'm really trying to become more aware of my own relationship with movement. And I just see everywhere, the more I become aware of it, that we're living in this world that's been so co opted by fitness and diet culture and just telling us to exercise in a very instrumental way, purely to control how your body looks aesthetically. And it's just so unhealthy and so under the influence of weight loss and fat loss is the only goal. And so many influencers now with more and more Instagram and TikTok fitness people coming into the forefront, just promoting their products and showing off their skin and blah, blah, blah. And it's not wholesome, but I see what you're doing. To me, it's so different. It's such a different vibe. But you're providing this outlet that reminds us the importance of moving for the joy of it, and that it's okay as an adult to keep fun as one of our primary values in life. And it almost feels wrong to have fun as a value, like it's not adult or grown up enough. But I think it's really
Mhm.
important. I suppose I'm really hoping to understand more about your journey with movement and how you came to be teaching and working with bodies in the way that you are now, and including your own. And maybe you can start by telling me a bit about, well, what's your title professionally? How would you describe what you do to people who don't know who you are?
Well, just today I described myself as part movement professor, part jester. So it's some combination of me collecting the technical knowledge that I can from these different fields that are often in contradiction with one
Mm.
another. Because I love learning. It is what I am doing actually most of the time, for better or for worse. And then getting sort of mischievous or naughty with the ideas that exist, and seeing like, well, what if we called it something different, and how else could this be done? So I take what I believe to be important bits of technical foundational knowledge that allow me to operate as a movement professional, and
Mhm.
then use that to conjure experiences where people can cut loose, because for some people they won't trust play unless there's a compelling reason to do it. And for some people that they might need some sort of explanation around why this is good for their pelvis.
Mm.
And then for others, just the invitation was enough. So I'm a movement educator, and I've been teaching movement actually since I was a child, because I would run around the neighborhood and grab kids and say, like, come over, I'm teaching a dance routine, I'm going to costume you, the show is at 7. And it actually never stopped. But I did start getting paid as a dance teacher when I was a teen, and that moved me through the fitness industry, like teaching all the group fitness classes, personal training, finding corners of movement that were not explored at the gym at the time. So teaching classes that would combine some of the intentionality that comes from dance and putting it into movement that is more agreeable with all bodies, regardless of dance training, or without the pressure of a, a dance aesthetic, but
Mhm.
just that people could feel themselves being like radiant or reaching into the space beyond them. And there's some of these phrasings that are very natural, and they're not just phrases, they're ways of experiencing movement for many people who have danced that are not included in your usual fitness education, but I think that they are central to feeling yourself whole and feeling confident when you move. This is actually a topic that comes up often when I'm teaching is helping people sense their whole self. That like that you can feel your whole body at once, as opposed to parts doing different things.
Mm.
So I'm just looking for different strategies to do that, and a big one of them is actually getting people to engage in play.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you, in your movement education, do you seek to help people therapeutically if they have pain, or are you more on an exploratory, enjoy moving side of things, or what's the balance there? Because everyone comes
Oh,
in with some kind
yeah,
of problem, and how do you manage that in your education?
yeah. There's I'm not a therapist, or do I feel like I have the training appropriate to really work in an assessment type protocol with a lot some types of pain or injuries that people present themselves with, and that in many cases, what people describe as pain can use some exploration,
Mm.
and they've cast off some area of their body and put it out of their awareness, like a black hole
Mm.
in their ability to map their motion. So I'm often inviting people to like play at the edges of pain and just like get a little more granular and run tests around. Let's confirm if that actually does feel risky, or they go, oh, now that we're doing it, it's not actually painful. I'm just feeling pressure or something like that. So I'm helping people build more literacy or vocabulary around reading the sensations that they have blanketed with the term
Mm.
pain, which I can't doesn't always solve everything. And then I say,
Yeah.
okay, this is when you go to someone else. But I think that the work that I am doing isn't covered usually in therapeutic contexts as much.
Mm.
It's like let's figure out either let's fix what's going on or hopefully get to a root issue. But one of the largest problems with therapeutic protocols is that people don't actually do the exercises that they're supposed to do. And part of that is because they might feel so distant from like fun or meaningful, or for some people, doing their exercises is
Mm.
reinforcing the notion that they're broken or they're injured. And
Mm.
so like I'm like, how can we reframe you practicing these things that help restore ease and freedom?
That's a huge missing component of a therapeutic approach to helping people with their bodies. And, sometimes it is valuable to have a distraction and going into it with the mentality of, I'm going to fix myself because I'm broken. I'm going to pay a lot of attention to the sore spots of my body in a very intellectual way. I don't know if that's always helpful for some people. And I think if you can have an approach where it reconnects this lovely relationship with that part of your body through joyful exploration, I think that has a huge therapeutic value that's quite underrated. But you're never going to go to a physio that says, let's just like play with this thing. Well, you might. If you became a physio, you might take that approach.
I think there's a few out there. I know a couple that use play and use games as a way to help people relocate their attention and then reawaken a capacity that had been coded as like fearful or dangerous. And it's remarkable how some distraction is the right word to some extent. Like we need to put your attention on a different aspect of the moving experience, and sometimes that does resolve the
Yeah.
pain or fear. Yeah.
100%. I remember, just very off topic, but as a kid, I had this really distinct memory of that for the first time. I must have been grade 3, and I remember just slammed my thumb in a door really hard, and it was horrible. It was so painful. It was just throbbing. But then I also have this memory of, within an hour, getting distracted by playing, and then I forgot that my thumb hurt, and it was like that was the solution, was just forgetting about it. So,
Yeah,
there is
it's
therapeutic
gonna
value
heal.
in
It's
distraction.
probably.
But anyway, back to you, Marlo. So, what kind of goals do people usually come to you with? What would you say is the questions people have, or what are they trying to work on when they sign up for a class with you or want to
Mhm.
work with you?
sometimes it's a really long list of skills that they want to be able to do. So
Mm.
that would require certain capacities, like they would require that you can do a handstand with one arm and hang from the other, getting upside down in various ways. Um, so the specific skills that I help people work towards, which I really do love the process of problem solving that comes with finding the right progressions for an individual, because it's not a linear pathway towards any given skill, and that figuring out what keeps moving the needle in somebody's capacity, I really enjoy that. But the larger body of work and reason that people tend to come to me is just continuity, ease, confidence when they're moving. The ability to move continuously, and the words that most people use is get out of their head. So
Mm.
the larger obstacle to them moving in the way that they would like to see themselves moving is actually the way that they use their mind and attention when they move, because that is reflected as movement quality. It is a very clear a marker, the smoothness of your movement, the comfort, the lack of excess guarding of what's going on in your inner world while you do it. So
Mm. And is
um,
it primarily dancers, professionals, or is it people that also have zero dance experience?
no, mostly people who did not come from dance.
Oh, interesting.
Mostly, yeah, people who started as adults. They got curious about either rolling on the floor or like flowing mobility, pole dance, and I hope to offer both like some shortcuts to continuous movement that don't require this years and years of training, that's without some of the shame or the suffering that many people experience if they've had a longer history with Western dance forms and like studio culture. So
Are you trying
yeah,
to talk to me directly when you say
I
that?
know, I know,
Yeah.
I know about your
Oh
thoughts. So
dear.
yeah.
I think it's so beautiful to be able to come into dance as an adult for that very reason, that you might come into it with less baggage from a traditional dance upbringing and having to unlearn a lot of, if you're like me and came from balletic world mostly, unlearning a lot of the perfectionism of that kind of culture is, yeah. And just curious, Marlo, what was your relationship with movement like when you were growing up?
It was central to goals to travel. I from 6 or so when I was in a studio for the first time, up until the end of high school. It was hours every day, and I loved it. It was I got to go to a dance high school, which meant that I would
Hmm.
have regular classes, just 2 in the morning, get sent off to another school, go to the dance high school, and then go to a dance studio at night. And it
Wow.
was, yeah, wonderful
Mm.
to have that much training and support. Like I had really great teachers and mentors during that time. So I loved it. When I would travel, I'd go to New York, I'd go to LA and test out the, commercial dance world, or like put myself amongst the pros. And it was really what I could see myself doing. Even before I turned 18, I knew that I wanted to be involved in movement. I wasn't sure how, besides, wanting to be a backup dancer for somebody famous. I was like, I will teach dance aerobics. And so I got certified with my group fitness exam like the day I turned 18.
Oh, cool. Were your
Yeah.
parents movers also?
No,
No.
no, they just supported it.
Hmm.
They were not.
Did they exercise at all? Did they stay active or no?
Not really.
Really? That's
Mm-mm.
so interesting. What do you think made it so special to you to have movement in your life?
I, I don't know. It was well, funny. Okay, when I was a child, I had started dance and then I quit because I did not like the teaching style. I was young. I was like under 10, and I was like, I don't like the way that they lead class, and I don't like the music they're using. And right now I see that it's because I had some discernment already around like I care about this, and I want to dance to music I like. And, and then a friend of mine in third grade had a red shiny dance team jacket, and I had quit, like the year or two before going to studio, and I
Oh.
was just dancing in the house. And I saw that red jacket, and I was reconsidering my choices. And I said, no,
Mm.
I need a dance team jacket as well. And apparently the only way to get one was to make it onto the dance team. So that pulled me back into the studio, and I got the jacket, but that ultimately wasn't wasn't what kept me there.
Oh,
Yeah.
isn't that funny? Do you have a
Yeah.
red jacket of your own now?
There still is one somewhere in this house. Surely my mother definitely would not have thrown it away.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Did
Hmm.
you study in university as well? Did you go to university?
Yeah, University of Miami. I taught dance for the university. So
Oh.
following along my I'm going to be involved in dance path, I sent a VHS tape of me teaching like a dance aerobics class to the University of Miami when I was before an incoming freshman, and they actually hired me. They said like there's a job waiting for you. It was pretty wild. So I was working for the wellness department and was teaching in the extracurricular program
Mm.
coming in, and I majored in anthropology
Oh, really?
and
I didn't know
yeah,
that
and
about you.
public
That's
relations.
cool.
Yeah, so uh, that has continues to weave in to I think the way I work, and part of the way that I like to always question the way we do things and how else things can be done. So
Mm.
yeah, that thread started early as well.
How did that fit together for you? The anthropological inspirations or learnings, how did that weave into your dance training, you think?
Well, when I first I hadn't heard the word anthropology until I got to college and saw it on the class list. I was like, "What's this?" I signed up for it, and I was struck with just the it felt so important to learn more about what it meant to be human and
Mm.
how we came to have the bodies that we have, what environmental circumstances and ancestral choices gave us the form that we have, and
Mm.
how culture shapes our lived reality, and to see the tremendous variety in the life ways that people have, because if we can only see our own as good and right, it means that we'll really miss out on a lot of the beauty in the world.
Mm.
So it weaves into the questions I ask about movement. For example, we are structured for some kinds of movement that we could do for many hours a day. And there are other forms of movement choices we could make that we could tolerate a small amount of volume. But when you start doing it for hours and hours a day,
Mm.
there's sort of no wonder, regardless of how good your quote technique is, like it is not a technique that we have ancestrally been endowed with enduring for hours a day. And it can make sense, because I think a lot of movers or performers like start to think that something is wrong with them or they're fragile because they break down doing some aspect of their craft. And it's just not what human heritage has set us up to do. It's like we can do it, and it's maybe not the best choice for to maximize longevity of motion. So
Mm.
run into this a lot in pole and in these more in any I mean all movement forms. As you get to the higher levels, the elite levels, they are harnessing extreme potentials, which are it can be very fun, exhilarating, gratifying, and come with real risks.
And how did you get started in professional dancing? What was your first gig?
I think this was also when I'm in high school. I got hired to perform in a magic show, and then I got hired to be a jellyfish at the Virginia Marine Science Museum jellyfish exhibit. Because I went to this dance high school, there were some opportunities that would come around, and they would choose some of us for paid work. So it allowed me to start to have that experience. And then I moved to Miami for school, and I danced for Latin music artists and was in like MTV VMAs when they were happening in Miami and was able to do
Oh,
that there and go on tour. And then I moved to New York and continued that into to larger scales.
cool. Did you ever get to do your dream of being a backup dancer in a music video?
I did. I was in music videos and on tour with artists. I
Are you allowed
wasn't on
to?
like the biggest names out there, but
I was gonna
yeah,
ask, are you allowed to name any of
who
the artists you were on tour?
yeah. I was on tour with Latin music artist Christian Castro, who's well known in Mexico, but not so much in the United States. But I was in with Fabulous, who's a hip hop artist, a rapper, Wyclef Jean, Nelly, Pharrell.
Haha,
Um,
cool.
yeah, Diddy, although he's canceled. So
Yep.
yeah, yeah, yep. Uh,
Pole is now a big part of what you do, pole dancing. How did you first encounter that?
yeah, a friend just mentioned she took a class, and I said that sounds like a good time, and so
Mhm.
I started. I took a class, and then felt that I needed more of that in my life, and got a pole and started practicing on my own.
Yeah.
So it just really felt like here is a place where I can apply all that I know about movement and will discover so much that I don't yet know. And the one thing that pole does is it highlights what you can and what you cannot do very, very clearly.
Yes.
And for that reason, it also will start to introduce you and motivate you to learn to do things that you otherwise wouldn't have tried to do. And
Mm.
so if you start to feel yourself getting stronger and accomplishing feats that maybe you never thought possible for yourself, and so that it can be pretty addicting.
Mm.
That sense of accomplishment.
Mm.
So that was feeling that, as well as blending together dance styles that I had practiced, and the the true delight and intrigue of exploring the sexy and erotic aspects of that movement. I was like, this really brings it all together. Can't get enough.
Yeah.
So mhm.
I've tried pole once, I gotta say. There was a Groupon. Do you have Groupon in the States? Where it's like this
Yeah, yeah.
coupon company that has these deals you can sign up for to promote your business. And so I found a Groupon. My friend and I went to this pole class, and I was blown away. It was so hard. Were you able to do a pull-up before your first pole class?
No,
Really?
no. Is
Wow.
but I after starting to do pole, I eventually tested it out and could do one. But
Mm.
that was actually like a important stone. It felt like a boulder in the way of my physical progress. So even I was a trainer, and I couldn't do a pull up. Like I could not just hang from a bar and bring myself up. What it felt like, I would grab the bar and I would just grunt really hard, and wherever a lat should be was just a black void of nothing. I like there was no sense of how I could get up to the bar at that time. And I remember watching other people, and particularly if I saw a woman doing a pull up, I was like just baffled. How is she doing that? Anyway, I started doing pole and like climbing and learning these other skills, and then that coordination revealed itself because I grew up in dance. I didn't grow up doing gymnastics, and
Yeah, yeah.
that would have been it's certainly for people who did have a history of climbing things as children, even if they stop for a period of time, those connections seem to
Mm.
come back much more easily than for people that have never utilized like upper body trunk coordination in that way.
Oh, hell yeah. And
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting you said that doing pole kind of helped you to reconnect with your lats where there was a void before.
Mhm.
It's something you said in the beginning too, that people have these parts of their body that they're disconnected to, and having this more playful way of interacting with your lats ultimately
Yeah.
led you to doing pull-ups, which maybe just focusing on grunting with the bar in a traditional gym setting might not have
Right.
inspired you as much. That's really cool. Yeah, it's a hell of an arm workout doing pull. I was just baffled as well by the moves that you were being asked to do. And this was just a beginner class. I was so sore the next day. So I wanted to ask you about gym culture as well. So were you doing fitness before pole, you said? Um,
Mhm.
so when did you really get into actually lifting weights and going to the gym? Was that all throughout your dance training, or was there a certain period where you
Yeah.
stepped into that?
I actually started when I was a teenager too.
Okay.
Like I first was started going, now at that time it was motivated by things that were floating around the dance high school around, needing to be thinner and that sort of thing. So my initial motivation was like, this is how we stay trim as a teenager. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then in college, I was already working in a gym. So I would like go to it, do some stuff. Come New York, I actually was again working in gyms, and so I was in them all the time, and bit by bit, and continuing education by continuing education, I started to have a better sense of how to train myself and how to build the capacities. I think there's a you build an innate sense of training from any discipline that you've spent a lot of time in. So just coming from a life of dance, I could say I have a sense of I feel like I'd like a little bit more of this and make some assumptions and kind of get there. But it was a long journey. I mean, and it still continues. I'm studying all the time around, it if a person or myself wants this capacity, what sort of inputs will get me there?
Hmm.
And that's included a lot of like wrong turns in that. But I did start quite a while ago, and in New York, I was working as a fitness model for Wilhelmina, which meant that I was getting gigs being in like Shape magazine and Fitness magazine and billboards for protein bars and stuff like that. Um, which was all interesting, and that included sometimes you would see that the photos that they're showing in the magazine, they've altered your body. For me, they would tend to airbrush out my muscle definition so
Really?
that yeah, so that you're what they would call toned, but not
Yeah.
shredded, or lean. But I did not love that, still don't love that as a like, is this as there's some amount of gratification that's like I've made it, I'm in a magazine, but I was like, this is not how I want to be making a contribution. This is not a contribution actually.
I wonder if they airbrush the same things. I mean, the beauty ideals kind of change with the generations, and there was a period where very, very thin and ethereal was in vogue, and I think muscular now for a woman is a bit more trending. I'm not even sure. I try not to pay attention to it because it can really mess with your head trying to fit into whatever
Yeah.
the current norm is for how a woman should look. But did you, in your dance training, was there any pressure to have to look a certain way? Did you feel that at all from the teachers or the environment?
I there it was there, and I was even told explicitly at one point in high school when they would like bring you into the room and sort of give you a assessment of how they think you're doing. And I remember being told you should lose weight.
Really?
And yeah, I also remember being not very bothered by it,
Hmm.
like not significantly. I took it. I was like, okay, maybe I'll try doing these things.
Hmm.
And I really can, looking back now, see that I was not as affected as other people that I know, and was seeing people around me with eating disorders of all varieties and various struggles. And I really, I have to say that part of it might still be coming through with the way that I work, is that like I don't like my identity is not the movement that I do.
Hmm.
It's like that this is a source of vitality. like dancing or just like moving in general is to feel more alive and give you the tools to deal with the different things that come at you in life. And for me, a place to cultivate physical intelligence. And something that certainly makes me feel like I have less of that is being yanked down into the muck and despair by a practice that could be life giving. Because I've always been playful with it and would be turned to for creative ideas since then.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Where do you think that came from? Because I'm just thinking about, I had a very similar experience, not being explicitly told to lose weight. I think I probably would have been completely crippled if I was directly told to lose weight, but it was always just there in the dance studio
Mm-hmm.
culture that if you gained weight, it would be bad. So definitely
Mm-hmm.
don't. And maybe you should skip meals. And there'd be lots of calling out when girls did gain weight and
Yeah.
a bit of shaming of that. So I was quite thin. I never got told that I needed to lose weight, but I really did internalize that. And it really
Mm-hmm.
sucked the joy out of moving for me. And I don't know what it is about me that made me susceptible to that. But can you pinpoint anything for you or that that focus on the vitality and using dance as an expressive tool and moving through challenging things in your body? How did you get that from such a young age, do you think? Because I would love
I
to
don't I
be
I
taught.
don't even know because actually, I mean I remember being told explicitly like you should lose 13 pounds. And that
13
idea was
pounds.
actually even reinforced by my mother, who was like totally in support of dieting and like and that was what she was always doing. And so I can't tell you why it's but I distinctly remember being in so we had there's the modern department and the ballet department. So you had a major. This is high school, but they would call us majors. And the ballerinas would be in the dressing room crying like all the time. And to me, I was like, kind of like funny that like, oh, look at the ballerinas. They're always in despair because, and I felt the correlation at that time. I was like,
Mm,
you're going through this because of the way that you're being told to move. Like
mm,
this form that you are believing in, not as a thing you can do, but as like truth and rightness and value, is the reason that you're crying all the time. And
mm,
it was like I felt it, and I was like, that's not me. I'll be over here in the corner rolling on the floor.
mm,
And so
mm,
I did, of course, we practiced all movement forms, and so I really value the training I had in ballet as a strategy for building capacity that I otherwise wouldn't have, because it
mm.
certainly does cultivate, I can get my leg up where I can get it because I did ballet still to this day.
Yeah.
It still goes.
But you're
But
able to keep a
every
boundary between you and the negative messaging about what your body should look like and perfectionism and
for the most part, yes, because I never had a moment that was really pulled me down. The struggles I had more in my movement journey probably came on the tail end of injuries that meant that I couldn't move the way that I used to, and but navigating, well, what do I do now if people really want to see this from me and I can no longer do that? What am I offering?
mm,
Those are probably more of a challenge than that, because it perhaps those that was more like the path that I had carved for myself, and like shapes and skills that I had developed that at some point lost that capacity due to an injury
mm,
that took was maybe more of a challenge.
mm. Yeah, dancers are no strangers to injuries. It's going to happen eventually if you push yourself hard enough. And would you mind telling me more about that? What sort of challenges did you encounter, and what was your process moving forward from injury? It can be quite challenging when it is
Yeah.
what you do for a profession, and having
Hmm.
to take the time off and having to really redefine what it is that your movement practice looks like. What was your injury or injuries, and
Yeah.
what did you do from there?
Yeah. There's been three big ones: a lower back rib thing, a hip thing, and a shoulder thing that are they all at different times, and all of them came there was a particular incident where something went, one of them was the probably the most dramatic was I was doing a trick in the air on the pole where you have to hold the pole between your leg and the side of your torso. So if you can imagine, however much your body weighs, that is how hard you're pulling on your leg in order to stay in the air in this like very side bent split. And the pole was a bit too high. It should have been in your waist space between your ilium and your floating rib, and it was on my lower ribs. And I pulled really hard and fast, and it felt like my ribs moved through the center of my body. It was just this, I could feel them like move. And then afterwards, I was like struggling to breathe, couldn't walk. And that's because like everything that attaches to your lower ribs, which is a lot of important things, was injured, like probably diaphragm, psoas, QL, abs, like, and so I had the recovery from that. But then a couple weeks, maybe month later, I was laying face down and I went to go lift up in a cobra as I was feeling better, and I just could not lift up. It was like my lumbar spine had turned into something with no articulative potential. It was like a block. There's no ability to move there. And then as I went and got x-rays, it was no mystery as to why, because it was so clouded with arthritis that they were actually concerned. They were like, that they tested first, this is some sort of, a really dangerous inflammatory condition. And it was just like a response to who knows what sequence. It's hard to say sometimes with injuries, like what really happened, what led to what. But the on the coming out of that, it did mean that my spine did not bend anywhere near what it used to, and it never really came back from that. Pain resolved, moving without fear resolved, and well, that's important because that's just daily life stuff. But it meant that a lot of the skills that I at the time was either performing, or even people would invite me literally across the world to learn from me. Like I couldn't demonstrate anymore. But I think what saved me in that was that I've really the identity as a person who is like sharing movement and teaching movement. Again, that started when I was a child. So that's always been the main driver, rather than I want to be on stage and I want to be the spectacle. I'm more like, I want to help you feel more free than you have before.
Was that process then for you? Was there a rehabilitative phase where you went through doing conventional physio, or what did that look like from there after that experience?
Not that much, because in the United States, you had to pay for health insurance, and I didn't have any. So for a long time, I didn't really get care. My partner was a chiropractor, though, so I did have access to his wisdom and care, but I didn't do the typical things.
So what do you remember doing at the time? What kind of movements and explorations do you remember playing with? Did you have an idea in your head that you needed to do something about it, or were you like, I'll just rest? Like, what was that like?
Well, when there was acute pain, your interest is like, let's just not be in pain. How do we resolve that? And it's harder for me to track the choices I made around movement recovery. I know that when I would feel myself getting stronger, like doing conventional strength training, I tended to feel better. Probably is, building more stability in areas that were perhaps a little too free moving as a result of the decades. I mean, I was in my groups of dancers, I would usually be the bendy one who would be doing the biggest oversplit or the furthest back bend or that kind of thing for decades. And so you are like exploiting that because that's sort of your signature. If you're on stage as a mover, you show off in many cases. So it led to study and curiosity and education. And I think that continues to assist me in recovery, because the more that you can be in contact or understand a structure. You know, when I first, my shoulder, this was a supraspinatus tendon injury, and somebody's like, you have a rotator cuff injury. And I mean, it was a long time ago. And at the time, I'm like, yeah, I've heard that word before.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably just left it with that
Mm-hmm.
for a couple years, you know, and then at some point you're like, wow, what would it be like to actually have a sense of what happened? What are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
What are they telling me was injured? And how could I not do that again? How could I help others not do that? Those sorts of things. So the injuries are you know, pathways to greater learning, awareness.
I mean, what it sounds like to me is that you didn't place too much importance on the injury, if those are the right words. Like, it sounds like it didn't really, you didn't take it to this deep level of, I have to fix myself. But it sounds like your attitude towards it was a little bit more, okay, I'll go with the flow, as
Yeah.
opposed to now I have to do something about it. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Would you
Yeah,
say?
for sure. I mean, there are so many movement forms in the world. And of course, if you are in acute pain, you're not like loud acute pain. You might not be able to have a enjoyable movement experience, depending on the severity of the experience. There are so many movement forms that may completely navigate around the challenge that you're having,
Mm.
you know. And so at the time, maybe I was doing something that was like all about how far can you bend backwards and grab your leg and yank it over your head. I'm like, well, what if I really study movement forms that are all about flowing arms, and you know, like the spinal movement is just more undulatory, so you know, it went down that pathway. There are so many beautiful traditions of dance that are not about extremes. They're about enjoyment, musicality coming through, your ability to play with patterns and that kind of thing. And so I am often reminding clients of that as somebody's like they broke their foot and their sense is that like their life is ending. The skills that they as they know it are all gonna just burn and never come back. And I'm like, hey, take a look at finger tutting. You know, these are dance forms that people do incredible things with just their hands. And there's so many ways to express and to play with movement. And back to the distraction, I think that like there can be an aspect of healing and recovering that truly time does help with. And if you can be in love with something while that time is going on, then it's really going to help. Of course, great care and doing the right movement inputs, not continuing to make something worse. This is really important. But if you're also sad about the injury for the period of your recovery, how might you come out on the other side? You could have a whole new skill set
Mm.
that you started to play with. Learn the harmonica.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. I'm just psychoanalyzing myself as I hear you talk because I had a really difficult time recovering from a lot of injuries because I was in the exact opposite mindset of what you just discovered or just described. I'm quite sure that was a big part of it. Not being able to go with the flow of it and getting very fixated on how do I fix this problem. I don't think it was
Mm-hmm.
very helpful for me. I think it really did focus my mind on something that felt productive, which could have been the distraction that I needed, but I don't know if I would have maybe moved through things a little bit easier and a bit more joyfully if I hadn't been so hyper focused on what is perfection to fix this
Mm-hmm.
problem versus how can I adapt. And time, I have learned the same thing in the recent years that time will probably solve a lot of problems given that we are in a state where, as you said, you can fall in love with something, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's exploring movement or something completely different. And I think that's so underrated. I think that a lot of people come in, I'm a problem solver in a very
Mm-hmm.
specific biomechanical way. And people come in and they want some specific things to do. But more and more these days, I almost want to give the advice of just be patient and probably waiting and just resting as shit advice as that is to hear. You know, I think
Right.
it's also a little
Yeah.
bit, it's a bit demonized or looked down upon when people say, "Oh, just rest." because we want to do
Right.
something about it. But honestly, I think that more and more as I get older, maybe, and I need to rest more, I think that's pretty good
Mhm.
advice. Rest and find something fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. I can simultaneously look at some general advice like that and be like, oh, it's negligent because there are these specific practices that somebody
Mhm.
could be doing to re-educate, to build a new capacity, to accelerate a healing process. Periods of rest and hibernation, as unpopular as they are today, can be helpful. So, but this is where when the advice, like just rest or let it wait, I think that could feel confronting or impossible if you aren't like channeling the desire to create or to output into something
Mhm.
else. It,
Yes.
doesn't mean like stay in a dark room and stay in bed, but there's some other modes of expression. And I just want to weave that back to earlier. I think that as a mover, I don't tend to look at what I'm doing as this is for self-expression. That just as a phrase that doesn't tend to resonate with me. I do hear people say that there is an energy. There is like, you could call it activation. I could call it like there's just something that wants to be outputted. And if I don't have an opportunity to it, right, it'll manifest as like it can manifest as stress or anxiety. That like there's a sort of discharge process. And instead of just doing it by jumping on like cardio, it's really I enjoy like getting to play with patterns and possibilities. And we've lost a capacity. I think that there was like an energy flow that used to go into this particular activity. And if you just stop that
Mm.
and you don't find a way to work with it, like cycle it, bring that interest into something else, that could be part of how destabilizing and injuries are. You've
Yeah.
lost something, and what do you do now?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
do you fill that space with? Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you said also about not being identified so strongly with what you can do with your body and being able to be a bit more fluid with it and discovering new things that you can do differently, knowing that we're never going to have the same capacity for our whole lives. I have given up on needing to do the splits, but for so long I was so invested in needing to be able to do the splits. And then as I matured and realized my body feels worse the more flexible I am, actually let's play with what it feels like to
Hmm.
deliberately become stiffer and stretch less. And that's just for me. My body was never meant to be flexible. I don't think I'm more of a naturally stiff person. I remember as a kid being super stiff and doing the splits. When I was doing gymnastics as a small child, I remember it was so hard for me to develop flexibility and it was always so hard to maintain it. And it was so relieving being able to let go of that. And I probably could have saved myself a lot of grief if I'd let go of that sooner, but it's the thing to do when you're a dancer. I'm just translating most of what you're saying through a how can this help people, the people that I work with who mostly have problems and pain and they're not coming to see me for fun, but I think that bringing more of a fun state of mind into the work that I do would be really helpful for a lot of people. But I need some advice from you.
Okay.
So, making a connection with your body. I remember being
Mhm.
in a state when I was first coming out of my traumatized professional dance years, and I had no connection to my body. Let's say I was doing an exercise, and the goal is feel X muscle stretching.
Mhm.
There was very few parts of my body that I could actually feel in the right spot,
Mhm.
doing the right thing. It just felt like, yeah, like a black hole. The whole thing was a black hole. How can you possibly expect to make change in your body if nothing, you can't feel it?
Yeah.
And I've encountered a few clients over the years where that's also where they're at, where they just can't feel their system. And it
Mhm.
almost feels useless to try to do anything to make mechanical change or state
Mhm.
change if they can't feel it first. It's just like going through the motions, but they can't feel the muscles that
Yeah.
are meant to be lengthening or activating. They can't feel the movements of their joints. And I know how I got through that, and it was a long process,
Mhm.
and there was quite a bit of there was emotions to unpack, and there was different things to play with, different practices, some involving marijuana, to get back into a state where I could feel myself again. But I wonder how do you think about this? How do you help people to make that connection to their body that permits them to make changes in how they're moving?
Yeah.
Idea of
Yeah. I mean, for this, I use like my closet of options. They're like, what am I going to try on with this person to see if I can invite them in to feeling themselves. So
Hmm.
one, just in terms of experience design, as a rule for finding the right level of interest. So we can only get pleasurably lost inside of an experience that we are interested in. And it
Yes.
has to be simple enough that it's easy for people to immediately to understand, that it lands. A way that I often start with people is I go, we're gonna use an area of the body that for pretty much everybody that I'm working with, they have access to and can move, which is their hands.
Mm.
And we'll do something like, this was one that I taught recently. We had a pen, we had a piece of paper, and I'm like, okay, everybody, pen on the paper, start to draw circles. Don't stop. Good. Now make them bigger. Now draw it slower. Okay, move them down low, move it up high, And so we're like, they already are in a practice of continuous movement. And they're already in the practice of moving and seeing a movement pathway on a piece of paper. And gradually I'm like, okay, make the circle bigger. Make the circle so big that it's coming off the paper and then back onto the paper, off the paper and back onto the paper. And what do you know? Like I'm teaching spinal movement mapping through a doodle, but it's really important, like that we start with what is truly familiar and is truly comfortable. And you can turn anything. Like you can turn itching your eyebrow into a handstand if you do it like with enough granularity. This is where I think that in some cases when people go like I can't feel myself or I can't feel myself whole, it's not that they can't do it, but it's that the conditions of that moment and the expectations that they have, the predictions that they're making, the language that's being used, it's just not creating the right playpen for
Mm.
them in that moment. So that's just a principle of like designing the experience is really important. And that it also comes down to the language that we use, because what we call things shapes our experience and our predictions about them. So I'm often renaming things
Mm.
and not using the name that people might use to describe what they see as an issue. So that's sometimes let's change the language. If somebody predicts that they can't feel themselves, that
Mm.
is their prediction and their belief. They're going to try to verify that by change what we're calling it, change it as some sort of experiment exploration. I mean, there's the classics like heightening the proprioceptive input. How can I put like bands on this person in different directions that are like they're maybe they're getting moved. Sometimes I've wrapped like a rope or a rubber band around somebody. I'm actually moving them so they can feel themselves getting passively moved. And then
Mm.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stop. You keep going.
Mm.
So like I move them and they sustain the motion that was happening. And then, after that, maybe they come to a pause and wow, they do feel like their back tingling or something like that because well, there's circulation there now and things
Mm.
have started to move. Another this happened recently. So in my floor flow teacher training, I'm helping the group be able to track their whole body at once, which is like really engaging your skin, your fascial web. Like can you track where you are from your fingernails, toes, head, tail, the surface of your skin? Like if you can you pause at any moment, see the map of what you're doing. For some people, maybe it's a yes. For a lot of people, it's a no, because of how they've trained to experience themselves is just regional and off with a lens of am I doing it right? So somebody was telling me that they were having difficulty, that they could feel their legs or they could focus on their arms, but like doing both at the same time, it felt like too much, which is true because if we're taking our regions of our body or cues and we're holding them as discrete items, we have a maximum number of things we can hold in our mind, right? At any time and manage. So what's a shortcut to feeling whole? For this person, I was like, okay, well, do you have an animal that you really like watching? And she's like, pandas. I was like, okay, be a panda for a moment, like roll on the floor like a panda. And she went for it. She was up for it. She could feel her whole self. Mm. And the reason is when we engage in, and it doesn't even have to be like a theatric of playing an animal, but even if I say like, go reach your arm for the doorknob as if you had to open the door really quickly, people will whole body organize for this thing that they already know how to do in life. That as soon as it's in an exercise context, it gets segmented, disjointed, questioned. I like look for ways to use, theater or play to bring back the cohesive whole that we all are. We can gamify everything. I think that a cool place to begin is how can I take them from doing something that they already know and do really well and gradually transform it? And then how can I name this in a way that reinvents it or like ignites a possibility of experiencing it? Another brief example, I was teaching some movement recently and I showed them, I gave them this very simple sequence. Let's just say it was like sit up, lay down, roll over. They're doing it. Okay. And I said, now make it dreamy. Feel like it's a dream sequence. And everybody, it was like started to like get really smooth and continuous. And they all had these individual ways of experiencing it. I didn't say imagine. I just said make it dreamy. And for that group of people, you see their whole system and intention organizes around that intention. And that is also often missing in exercise, where it's instead we're like, there's a pattern that we're trying to fulfill. But sometimes I say like, do it as if you enjoyed it. And then people usually laugh and then they start to enjoy it. Or like, have what happens if you have 5% more fun when you do it? And suddenly people change the way that they're breathing, which is really different than reminders like, don't forget to breathe, which just usually creates like more tension and like, oh no, another thing I'm forgetting to do.
No, I think these are such important things to remember, especially for me, this is great to hear. Yeah, in my past and even now, I have this bias towards focusing more on the thing that is the challenge instead of finding a different way of designing the experience. Like, oh, you can't feel that. Well, just try harder. That doesn't really work very well. And I think I have a lot to learn in applying what you've just described of instead of just saying, oh, just keep trying. Just try to do the same thing over and over again and until it works. Because it might not. They might need something totally different. So I think I could have used that approach to my body back when I was first going through the real depths of having back injuries and wanting to recover from it. Having a bit more of a playful, less serious approach to it. And you mentioned playful quite a bit just there. I know that's a huge theme of what you do. And have you ever read or are you familiar with the play researcher Stuart Brown?
Yes. Certainly.
I wonder, has any of that really influenced you at all, or have you had any takeaways from his research?
Yeah, I mean, one key point is that like mammals learn how to exist, thrive, and get the essential skills they need through play. The benefits of that do not end in youth, right? So we need to build a new capacity. Play is a way to get there. So like the ultimate testing ground. With high variability. So there's that. And there's also just many different forms of play. I can't remember if this came from Stuart Brown's work or from other play related thought leaders that I've read, but it's important to consider that like play does not have to look jolly. It doesn't have to look immature or like jovial because I think there's a aversion to childishness from some people. And that is not an equals. Play does not equal childlike because there are forms of play like rock climbing, for example. Most people probably wouldn't say that's play, but it is like it's strategy. It requires deep focus. Like you could keep going or you could fall. Like that is a game that we're playing. And so There's serious play or dark play. So the suggestion is that like you are in an experience, but ultimately you want to keep going. There's a book called Finite and Infinite Games. That's a classic among people who think about play. And there's the games that we know that are have winners and losers, which is what most people have been exposed to in their like physical education and schooling and youth sports and so forth. And then there are the games that we make where our real objective is to keep the game going. And so we keep changing the rules in order to keep playing.
Mm.
I'm like, this is what I do within a movement classroom. Okay, we're like, great, okay, you're moving your shoulders side to side, and then we do that, like bring people into feeling it, and then before somebody could have the chance to get bored, I'm like adding a variable. Now, go higher as you do it. Now go lower, and you give time for people to acclimate to it, and then you change a variable. So that to me, that is a form of play where I'm just like continually changing the rules so that it's within the zone where it's going to be fun. Because if it gets too hard, no longer fun. If it gets too easy, you're going to get bored.
Mm.
Zone of
That's,
optimal experience. Yeah.
that's so what kids do too. I've
Mm-hmm.
just been spending more time with my partner's nieces, and it's so funny. They just, on the spot, they'll be in the middle of the game and they'll just change the rules. And we're like, wait, where did that
Mm-hmm.
rule come from? And that's just what they'll do, just keep adapting the experience. And as adults, we don't
Yeah.
really do that as much. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. I have this thing right now around social media. It's always a push pull with me in social media and being on it and not being on it and feeling the need to do stuff on it. And I wanted to ask you about what do you think about do the best exercise for this or do this stretch will solve your problems? Because I try to unfollow everyone who has anything to do with fitness advice currently. I just can't handle it anymore. I've unfollowed a lot of movement people because I noticed it was taking me away from really trusting what was best for my body. What do you think about the amount of fitness advice? How do you relate with social
Mm-hmm.
media? What's been your experience there? Do you feel like you have a healthy relationship with it as a person who you could say
Mm-hmm.
is an influencer with a decently large following? What?
I mean, well, there's a truth that like uh, I have the my career has largely been possible because of it, so so many of the wonderful things and the clients that I've had, like this is how they've found me and how I've been able to reach people. And people sometimes send me messages from just like I don't know, I was just at the gym doing something that's normal to me, but apparently not normal to others. But they say the things you're sharing really give me permission. And so like I acknowledge like the both the impact that I've been able to have on others and what it has afforded me in my life. But as far as my personal relationship, it is best when I'm using app blockers. I've had a news feed eradicator on my Facebook for 5 years. I haven't seen the news feed once.
Mm,
And on Instagram, I have it locked most of the time, and that is best. And when I do make a post, I can feel there's like, okay, what's going on there? What's happening? What's happening? And those days do not feel as good
yeah,
just because throwing something out into the world and watching what happens.
yeah.
And I actually, I don't post all that frequently because it generally doesn't feel like a inspired creative act. Historically, when I used to train a lot, I would just like dance and then I would share it. But the way that the nature of video and reels has like it's changed since then. The way content is, it's not just like here I was doing a thing. I mean, you could continue to do that, but it's just not really the appetite isn't for that anymore. I absolutely think that the things that the information that we're coming in contact with leaves its residues and to watch for how those are showing up.
Mm,
So that's something to watch out for
yeah.
personally. But that could be extended to like fitness advice or something like wherever you're this place that you are creating, making a contribution, whatever, nourishing yourself. If you find that these other images and ideas are detracting from your ability to be present and enjoy what you're doing, then yeah, it might signal there. I mean, there's simply not engaging with it. And there's also like maybe getting creative with the way that we interact with the things that we put on.
Mm.
For example, a strategy I have, if there's somebody that I have to interact with, perhaps that I'm related to, that their messages to me, they can cause a reaction, I make sure to read their text messages from sideways.
Mm.
Like I don't put it right in front of me. I put it here, and
Mm.
it changes how it feels. And so
Mm.
the experience that we have with something, an encounter, it may feel different from literally a different angle. Like you could even make a creative act. I am going to go look at some of those posts that get to me a little bit, rile me up, but I'm going to play with how am I being receptive to it? That takes a bit of maybe a bit more like mindfulness and intentionality than we might have available to us all of the time, but it is a possibility that exists.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I might have to play with that a little bit too.
What do you do?
Be the
You're like just holding your
weirdo.
phone. You're holding your phone over to the left, back, just a side eye. What are you doing? Scrolling Instagram?
Just scrolling,
Yeah.
yep. And just back to the posts on Instagram that I've seen from you, and I do feel that they give people permission to do something different, and they're not the typical try to look like me, do what I do. You're really, I think, famous for doing interesting things in the gym and making videos of them, and I really appreciate that. I think people need more permission to make up their own way of interacting in gyms and not do just the
Mhm.
standard sets of 10 reps and make gym a play space. And I've personally, as a person who's worked in gyms quite a bit, I've spent many years working as a personal trainer in a conventional bodybuilding gym and then more of like a functional fitness gym. And neither was really that liberating. And I went through a phase where I was really exploring wiggling on the floor and doing weird movements because they were really helping me and I felt good doing them. And I felt that I could then do my strength training movements and I'd felt a lot better if I did my weird wiggles on the floor first. But I had one of the trainers at the gym who I was friends with and he was a very lovely man and we were having a conversation once during one of our breaks, and he said, "So I see you doing your movement practice in the gym, and I just have to tell you, in all respect, there's a part of me that I can't even watch you because it just makes me realize that I don't have the ability, I don't have it in me to bring myself to do something like that in public." So I just like I cringe. I can't even watch you do it, but I know that it's because I personally don't feel like I have permission to do it. And this is a man who I thought was he was very introspective. He had a
Mhm.
quite a strong meditation practice and it really shocked me to hear that even someone that I don't know, I expected that he might have a bit more self-liberation to move the way he wants to move, but he was very in the bodybuilding or not bodybuilding, powerlifting mode at that time. And I think we
Oh,
can definitely get into these identities of I must do this in the gym. And then you do it for so long that you almost build an expectation of this is what people expect to see me doing in the gym, so I can't change my ways.
mhm.
And I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was just kind of rolling on the floor and exploring different movements. And I think it's a big part of making my gym sessions feel therapeutic while still getting in some strength training. And
Mhm.
so, how did you start doing your own kind of weird stuff in the gym? And if people want to know what I mean by that, go check out Marlo's Instagram page for some examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
what did
mean,
that look like for you?
again, I can't say there was a start. This feels like this is just how what I came here to do. I know that when some people encounter me or another moving outside of the norm, they don't have any interpretation other than they must be doing it for attention because they can't conceive of why someone would be moving outside of this incredibly narrow scope of sanctioned movements. Like, of all the possible ways that the human body can move, the set that is deemed appropriate in a gym is that's what's embarrassing. Like
Hell yeah.
it is. Like, no, like if we're going to be embarrassed about, we should be embarrassed about the fact that we've decided that like this is all that would equate fitness. There are reasons that you don't hold half your body weight over your head and then do wild experiments, right? For both of us. Like there are certainly ways which there's a advised form. Okay, no arguments there. But the types of the body policing and form policing that happens on the in the fitness internet, like it is like I mean, the first word that came to me was shocking, but again, it's not shocking. But I'm like, oh, so what am I going to do about it? And that is like continue to learn that one, like all these other cultures around the world don't have historically throughout time, human cultures like did not come to this conclusion. This is unique, is as pervasive as it is. This is a unique expression of a culture that this is the way that we believe that a body is fit or well. It is not necessarily true. And there's a blossoming body of research around embodied cognition. The fact that intelligence is not local to the brain, and that the greater variety of movement, the ability to problem solve, and the ability to identify something going on within your body. There's some sort of sensation or signal and interpret it into the movement that is needed. To me, this is intelligence. So we might say it's pretty normal that somebody could feel thirst and then go, I should drink water. That somebody could feel hunger and then eat food. And that's not everyone. Some people struggle with interpreting those signals as well. But this extends to the body. Like my feet are asking for being on the ground right now because I've been sitting here, on this call with you, and I can
Sorry.
you can interpret. No, it's good. We got to do this. I don't have a good setup for a standing desk, so that's on me. But the ability to like interpret, act upon, redirect, like this is an expression of physical intelligence to me. So yeah, I continue to both know the strength training, know the mobility programs and the mobility science, and be able to like absolutely destroy it with play, and with creative possibilities.
Yeah. Well, what I heard there was that you have an ability to actually listen to the cues that your body is giving you and respond by doing what feels like what your body wants to do and not be influenced by what the outside world is saying that you should. Something I'm really exploring right now and struggling with a bit is having a history of a bit of compulsive use of exercise to conform to how I think a body should look throughout my years of ballet indoctrination. I realized recently that I don't really know what feels good. Like you said, you feel like your feet are itching to stand up and move because you've been sitting. I can feel that, but if I were to just ask myself, my body, what kind of movement do you want to do today? I don't know if I would be tuned in enough to what that means beyond the fitness, diet culture, what I should do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. But this is when you go, but in any situation where there's so many choices available that it becomes debilitating, we reduce the field. So we go, okay, all right, don't know what you're going to do today. So we go, would we rather start with walking outside or jumping up and down in place? Like give yourself two options. You go, okay, I'm going to choose walking outside. Okay, great. So would you rather walk fast or walk slow? And just like one choice at a time could lead you down an adventure. Just like, did you know the choose your own adventure books? You're like, yeah, you're going to go to this page or this page. It didn't say pick any page, it's limiting the choice space is the key to like being able to make choices. Part of when we can't move forward is because we don't know what the next limited possibilities are. Too many choices available. So this applies to there, and I think that it is. I feel like I could misrepresent this when I say like I can feel that my feet are itching, as if they're like there's not some like glowing light message that's like feet are saying stand, but it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
this like
yeah.
what I feel is like my feet are a little bit like tingly and numb, and I feel the pressure on my butt flesh from sitting.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, there's been pressure there for a long time, and my feet, like the circulation,
Yeah.
so I'm then coming to some conclusion that, what would remedy that would be standing. So there's some if thenning and problem solving that goes into that. And I could stand up and be like, oh, that wasn't it,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. That also reminds me a lot of I interviewed a man named Corey Hess. His main practice is non-directive body movement. Have you heard of that before?
I listened to the podcast,
Did you?
so I
Oh,
have.
cool.
I
Sweet.
did, yeah.
And what you just said there reminded me a lot of one of the principles in that practice that he spoke about, which is just being able to feel the sensations of your body and without making a choice or without trying to do anything, let your body respond to the sensations that you're feeling. I wonder, is that anything that, have you ever explored anything like that in your practice? Do you do improvisation in dance that feels a little bit like you're just listening to what your body wants to do
Mhm.
and flowing with it? And
In some way it feels like an attribute of every day, but there's also
yeah,
time that's sanctioned for it, for just moving time.
yeah.
Sometimes that might be, I actually find that going outside, if I really want to like so-called body listen, it really helps me to be outdoors.
Mm,
But I also really love like a listening practice that is to music. And my only commitment is to move in response to what I hear, which means that I can even be a little bit late to the sounds that I hear, because if I hear, like I'm like, that's what my goal there is like, can I use my body as a physical expression of what I'm hearing, which for me liberates some of the weight or pressure that might come with like I'm going to dance.
mhm.
It's not like there's a song. My job is to listen, and I can move in response to what I hear. And that is also very nourishing and fulfilling. It's hard to do both, because if you're listening to music, my primary driver would be like, I need to honor the music that I'm hearing, which is different than like following what my body wants or needs. But I have to say that the second, the music is like seems like it's a stronger gateway for me to get in there, even if it was like music, 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 and then no music, and then you're in a different state, because it can be, you're in the void of possibility where to even begin for some people.
Yeah, I think music's a powerful tool. It was one of the things that I used when I mentioned I was in this state of disconnect from my body and unable to feel anything. And music really was a way in to get me back in touch with a deeper state of inhabiting my system. And there's even been periods of time where I've noticed I was having some really bad problems with my foot a few years back, and I couldn't listen to certain types of music throughout that period.
Mm.
It was so strange. I don't know what this is. I don't know the science of it, but I couldn't listen to anything but classical music while my foot was in pain. Everything else was too jarring for me. And then my foot healed, well, healed, feels better, whatever healing is, and I can listen to anything I want now. But it was just so interesting that throughout that period, only classical music, no lyrics, nothing electronic, just
That is super interesting.
yeah, I'm not expecting
Yeah,
you to have some
the wrong,
scientific
I don't know,
rationale for
the
that, but
wrong frequencies for your toes. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. All right, well, we both probably feel the need to get up and move a little bit. So maybe just to finish up today, I'm curious about what kinds of things are you currently doing in your own personal movement practice to support your needs right now? Are there anything that you're doing that at this stage in your life you do as a regular movement practice to take care of something that needs attention, or do you have any personal new things that you're learning about? What are you doing now in your own movement practice?
I mean, one of the most important things I could possibly do that does require diligence is taking walks
Mm,
because I easily am like, oh, I don't feel like it, but it's really important. It's like the most fundamental movement nourishment that I can think of that I feel better on multiple levels when it's there. Simple but true. Yeah,
agreed.
that's
Love a good walk.
yeah. I do my strength training 3 times a week. I tend to, as I travel, I go to movement events where it's just like total overload. So I dance Brazilian Zouk, which is usually done all night long, which might mean over the course of a weekend, it's like 6 hours a day from midnight to 6 a.m. Really, really hard hours for me, for a morning person. It's not so much a particular practice, but staying in enjoyment and like noticing the when there's a bit more womp womp, and then using movement enjoyment to bring me back up from that. Like put on some music. That's a simple. It doesn't even sound like the movement practice, but the act of putting on like music and upbeat music, it stimulates motion.
Mm,
And if
yes.
there's no music, I don't do it. So I guess I'm interested in sometimes not the whole practice, but like the moments that create the state shift, like just open the door and step outside. Just push play.
Mhm.
you know
Yeah, the
yeah.
ritual, have a cup of coffee.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Can you tell me where, if people want to learn more about your online work, your classes, how can people, what's the best way to
Yes,
find you? What's your website?
flowmovement.net is my website, and my name, Marlo, Fisken, is on Instagram and YouTube.
.net, that's old school.
I know a plumbing company had flowmovement.com, so I was left with I got the job there. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, well, thanks so much, Marlo, for taking the time to chat with me. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm re-inspired to try to interact with a bit more playfulness and yeah, find a bit more enjoyment in my movement and try to tune into what is the next choice for my body. I think I'm going to go for a walk, actually. It's a beautiful sunny day. Well, thanks, Marlo.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Monica.
my pleasure.
Okay, so if you're still listening, thank you for making it all the way here. And are you not inspired by Marlo? And I didn't even get through half of the list of questions that I had for her. And I thought maybe I'd share a few things that you might not know about Marlo and I and our online relationship because we haven't met in person yet. And one day I really hope that we do because I think it would be awesome to try one of her classes. So, Marlo and I first met online when I wrote Dance Stronger, which was my book for dancers on strength training and injury prevention. I wrote that book in 2015, and you can still find it on my website at monicavolkmar.com/dance-stronger. That's Monica with a K, MONIKAVOLKMAR.com/dance stronger. And that book was really important to me. It just was like a vomit from my soul after I had left the dance world, and I had a lot of thoughts and ideas and opinions about what was wrong with the world of dance training and all of its traditions. And here was my contribution to how we can make it a little more well rounded on the cross training department. I don't really promote that book anymore, but Marlo must have somehow come across it and started to follow me from that point. And then later on, a few years later, when I decided to undertake my next writing project, back in the blogging days, Marlo was on my quote unquote team of literary advisors when I was writing that essay series, which I called Movement Practice. And that was me working through some thoughts and some things I was processing at the time, roughly 2017, 2018, which was all to do with the difference between exercise and movement, which I had never really thought about before. And it struck me that all my life I'd been an exerciser. And there was this whole thing called movement practice that was entirely different, felt different, had different goals, had a different intention. And it had become potently evident at the time how I was a chronic overexerciser and it was robbing my life of joy, which is kind of interesting that that was the theme that I chatted with Marlo about today. And it's really something, if I'm honest, that I'm still working through today. In that work, movement practice, which I never published, but I'm hoping that I can share some of those ideas on this podcast because I still think they're good and relevant and worth sharing. I talked about topics like what's the difference between exercise and movement? What are the 5 movement archetypes, which is definitely a topic for a future episode coming up. What is a healthy relationship with movement and what does that actually look like and how do you cultivate that? And a few more. And all through that rambling and writing and refining of my thoughts, Marlo was reading it and giving me feedback, which is something I'm really grateful for her for. And most recently, Marlo and I were chatting about off the recording was that Marlo has recently become a member of the online Anatomy in Motion learning community. And so I'm really excited for this phase of her movement learning journey and to see how she integrates this new understanding of closed chain joint mechanics into her classes and workshops and personal movement practice. So if you're currently training with her or you're considering training with her, you may start to notice a few different things that she's playing with. And I truly believe that the exploration of honest joint mechanics as they're meant to be experienced can be a really wonderful way of connecting with our bodies in motion and with ourselves on a deeper level. Studying anatomy in motion and using it in my personal movement practice over the years allows me to make my body more robust to the unexpected duresses of life. For example, like last week when I fell off my bike, it was a foggy morning and I didn't realize how slick the ground was. And I was biking to work as I normally do. And I was going around a corner down a hill on a bridge. And I skidded and tipped off my bike and landed flat on my stomach. And I was wearing a helmet, but it wouldn't have mattered because if I had not had the spine extension, I would have smacked my face right on the ground. But I was able to land, extend my thoracic spine, and push up off my hands without breaking both my wrists. No bones broken, no face smashed, no back injuries, no knee injuries, only some minor scrapes of my skin. And I have to say, I was wearing Lululemon pants. My Lululemon pants did not rip, but my skin ripped. So what does that tell you about the quality of good old Canadian Lululemon? If you're listening, consider being a sponsor. And I don't think that my body would have been that robust if I hadn't had this committed movement practice in which I explored the joint mechanics that all humans' body ought to be able to perform. And having a movement practice that is exploratory and detective-like, it really helps me to trust that my body is going to be resilient to the fun things that I hope to do with it in the future, like take one of Marlo's pole dancing classes or just dancing in the living room with my niece. So if you'd like to learn more about how to use anatomy in motion in your own movement practice, I share case studies and information on my Substack. So if you'd like to learn more, please go to monvolkmar.substack.com, where you can subscribe to all of my musings, case studies, podcasts, and movement exploration videos for you to follow along with. If you found value in this podcast, please consider giving back by becoming a paid subscriber on Substack. It's just $5 a month, And you get bonuses like a special discount on one-on-one sessions with me online and on my Liberated Body workshop, which explores using anatomy and motion assessments and movements in your own body. Again, go to monvolkmar, that's monvolkmar.substack.com to subscribe. That's all for now. Until the next episode, I wish you much joy in your movement detectivery.